You're listening to Factual America. Fill us in, Jake. How'd you get to this place?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I've been trying to ask myself this question for a while too. It's sort of a weird cultural thing where people are fascinated on this sort of thing. And I think for me, it's the nostalgia and the idea that it's something like a mall or a theme park, which I visit obviously every every time I can, and it's something of a pleasure and fun and entertainment. And then when you see the complete opposite of that, or something that's sort of stuck in a different era, a different state, the vast stark contrast between the two is just so fascinating. And for me too, it's like, how much money is being wasted on something like this, right?
Yeah.
In the case of Six Flags New Orleans, I mean, the city owns it, but they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on security every year, at least. It's a fascinating part of economics as well, is how these buildings all across America and the world just become abandoned. Like, how does that happen? And so I've sort of taken upon myself to tell the story, and I think we did that with this specific film on this specific property.
Yeah, well, I mean, just so clue, and we'll have links in the show notes, but you've got a YouTube channel that's Bright Sun Films, and you've got a few different series: Abandoned, Bankrupt, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, I would say, I mean, if you don't mind me saying, I think, and this what it struck me is that at your heart, you're like a historian, a business professor, and a bit of a sociologist, all rolled into one, with a sort of keen eye for innovation and as well as hubris and maybe arrogance. I mean, same thing. I've been in the corporate world. I've seen this. You buy an innovative company or whatever, and 5 years later, they're closing it down.
Right? Yeah, it's fascinating.
And why does this? I mean, I did an MBA dissertation on this. I mean, it's one of the, and you have it with this one. I mean, Six Flags, all gung ho. I forget. I think you give us the figures. You're really good with giving us looking at financials. I know it's as someone who's of this mindset, I really appreciate it. But or even your example on one of you look at Target Canada. I mean, I was just struck.
I was just going to bring that up too. Yeah.
130. Why open 130 stores and then turn right around and say, no, it was a mistake, and 2 or 3 years later, and you spend all that money, and how that money could have been spent otherwise.
Let's give a figure to that money too. That was $5 billion. Yeah. Transition. I just did a whole thing on Target Canada a couple of weeks ago too. $5 billion to enter a country with supposedly a business plan, opening, like you said, 135 stores or something like that across the country. But and remember, the Target, this is a $1 billion brand in the United States, but they didn't know what they were doing. Yeah. So I think it was 2 years later, closed everything, cut their losses, $5 billion down the drain, and they abandoned all their stores in Canada. It's insane.
It is. I mean, you'd think, well, maybe 10 stores in maybe the Toronto area or something. Yeah. But I mean, this is not meant to be a business school class or something. But but it is compelling, because I mean, I find it. It's just that you think about it. Well, instead of spending that money, how that from society resource standpoint,
Yes.
I mean, obviously it created some jobs when they refurbished all those stores and things like that. And so bring it back to this film. I mean, it's same thing with Six Flags, but still, okay, Katrina happened, but I think you have one of the developers pointed out that it wasn't just Six Flags New Orleans they shut down. They shut down, I know, Astroworld in Houston.
Yeah, Astroworld. And they didn't even try and sell off anything from that park. They didn't even try and sell the property. What they did was they closed Astroworld and then just demolished it. They didn't do anything with it. They thought it would be more financially viable, which it ended up not being, by the way. Yeah. They thought it'd be more financially viable to the company to just shut down the theme park revenue center and just demolish it. It's just bizarre how Six Flags thought it was in a weird bankrupt mindset in that time, where they thought, let's just close the parks, demolish them, get rid of them, let's cut them from our balance sheet, and restructure. It's just bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could do a whole separate just podcast just looking at this whole phenomenon.
Oh yeah.
Which if you're not scared away, we'd love to have you back on.
Well, I'm enthusiastic about it. So.
Well, you and I both. Whether how many other people in the world are there? I'm assuming John is too. But
absolutely.
So Jake, you made reference to this, and then that this is your directorial debut, at least from a feature length. So is this something that is this where your career's heading, or at least where Bright Sun Films is heading in terms
I'd like to think so. I've had an inkling to do a feature documentary for a while. And I guess YouTube has sort of been taking up all my time since then. And the idea of making a feature film on Six Flags sort of fell into my lap. And then all my friends in Los Angeles, they started pushing me to make it even something bigger and better, and start using these cameras and bring it to Los Angeles. We'll edit it and do sound mixing and all that. So it started out as a very small project. I thought I was just going to film it on an A7S and call it a day, but it ended up turning out to be this huge other different thing. And especially for me, who I've done stuff on for digital. I've been doing digital stuff and stuff on YouTube. It's been relatively small scale stuff.
Yeah.
So transition into something like this was a big step for me. But I think for my first film, we did a pretty good job, and I'm quite proud of it. And the people who helped me, especially John and Nick, our post-producer, everyone did such a great job. And I'm really proud of it. I really am. And hopefully this marks the next step for Bright Sun Films in the future for me.